game-changing discussions on the big ideas that shape our thinking. This is One2One.
Toyin Ajala is a consultant geriatrician and founder of JBS Gerontology Center, Nigeria's first privately owned healthcare establishment focused on the care and treatment of elderly people. Dr. Ajala is helping to facilitate a new model of accessible, affordable and patient-centered healthcare for Africa's growing elderly population. Toyin Ajala, welcome to One2One.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's a real pleasure to have you. Of course, you're one of the leading lights in the healthcare industry in Nigeria. You are a consultant physician and geriatrician. You trained as a physician in London in a specialty that I very fondly refer to as care of the older person. I spent a bit of time in that specialty myself. Can I ask you to talk to me here and now, in this country, in Nigeria, perhaps in Africa, what a care of the elderly person, the care of the older person service means for society right now? What makes it justify its place as a specialty? And perhaps you could talk a bit about the sorts of conditions and needs that elderly people have.
Okay, so like I said, I'm a physician for older people, so geriatric medicine. In the UK, to be a geriatrician, to be a certified geriatrician, you have to be a physician. So you've got to be a member, you've got to pass your membership exams. We're under the Royal College of Physicians. Sure. So we do this, so we do the same core training with, your cardiologists and respiratory doctors, etc. But it became clear in the Western world in the 60s that elderly people were not doing well. They weren't really being treated well, to be fair. I must say that even when I became a trainee in geriatric medicine in the 90s, in the late 90s, even at that point, geriatric patients were not getting the sorts of care they deserved. That has totally changed. It's completely evolved in the West. And what we know is that regardless of the condition, if you've got a geriatrician, a trained geriatrician, someone who is trained in those peculiar needs of the older age group, it doesn't matter what the condition is, surgical or psychiatric or whatever.
Correct.
They do better. They do better, they fare better, they survive and they do better overall if you've got a trained geriatrician involved in their care. And I remember in 2018 when I first came to Nigeria, people couldn't even pronounce geriatrician. They couldn't. They'd be like, you're a it was quite
a jack of all
whatever,
trades.
as in what exactly, they didn't know what it was. Yeah. And then fast forward to 2022, where people were now actively, as in Nigerians, searching online for a geriatrician. They'd actually tell me that they just knew. Someone said to me that his father it's his mother actually, in Abeokuta. And he'd bring her to Lagos and she'd see the cardiologist and she'd see the chest doctor and she'd see the endocrinologist and she'd see the neurologist and and then there was a day he just thought, there must be a doctor whose role it is to look after, because it was just like one person. And I think he Googled it and found geriatrician and then Googled and found me. Because I had to ask, so I used to ask, I don't ask anymore. How did you find me? And he said he found me online. He actually found me on LinkedIn. But he knew that there must be some specialty, absolutely, someone whose job it is to look after all of this.
To bring all this together.
All this together. And that's what a geriatrician is. Coming to Nigeria in 2018 opened my eyes to the challenges that the older age group face in Nigeria, and you've got to have my specialty present to help to manage all these conditions. So the first one I'm going to talk about is dementia. I was shocked when I came to Nigeria in 2018. So I'd done all my work in the UK really post medical school. So I thought dementia was a Western world problem. That is what I believed 100%. So I was shocked when I came into the country to find that it is such a huge burden, such a huge health burden. I would go as far as to say that 80% of our patient group right now has got dementia to one degree or the other. You have from the mild dementias to the severe dementias, more than 80%. More than 80%. And, with challenging behaviors and challenging issues. And even when they have other conditions, even if they have a hip fracture, have to go into hospital, there are always challenges managing them even around all of that. So that's where we've come in. So it's a big area. There was a huge gap that needed to be filled.
Yes.
Huge gap. And that gap is going to get bigger because Nigerians are getting older.
Of course.
That life expectancy, it was at one point said 46 years and 54. Very soon, we're going to, it's just expand. And by 2050, we are going to have an explosion. In 2050, you and I, Tooks, we're going to be in that age bracket.
Yes,
that's 25 years' time. Yeah. We're going to be in that age bracket. Our generation is aging better than our parents' generation and living longer.
Nigerians are living longer.
Despite cancer, despite cardiovascular disease and cerebrovascular disease, Nigerians are living longer. The healthcare challenges that we're going to face in 2050 is going to be very different to what we're facing now.
Absolutely. And to that point, of course, I mean, it's very well recognized that, that one of the concerns, the issues that a service like the NHS has is that people are living very long. Elderly care is expensive. And what that means really is that the burden on the structure, the funding of services is increased. What does that tell us today and looking forward a decade from now about the structure of our healthcare service, how it's funded? Is it going to be able to withstand the burden that comes from the fact that people are living or will be living longer over the next 10, 20 years?
It's going to be a big problem. So right now, I mean, the burden of, healthcare financing in Nigeria, as you know, is private. People have to pay their way. The government they've tried to launch, insurance schemes, etc., but they don't really cover the cost of the healthcare, especially for old people in any hospital. If you go to any hospital anywhere in the world, the majority of the people whose healthcare costs are high, heavy, they're the older age group. It's the geriatric age group because they're the ones who actually need healthcare services. It's almost inevitable that when you get to a certain age, you're going to need to see a doctor. And you're going to need to spend money on hospital stays, etc. In Nigeria, at this point, there isn't that facility. There isn't that, nobody's actually made space. The government hasn't, at this point, I don't know whether they can actually afford to cater to the healthcare needs of the elderly population. They can't.
Public services are not funded to the degree that they ought to be.
No. And so that's going to be a problem. And even when you look at the insurance schemes, not many insurance schemes want to cover elderly people. It's inevitable that an old person would need healthcare.
Yeah.
So not many insurance schemes cover. So if you're over the age of 79, you're kind of scuppered, unless you've got the money or you've got, we've got a charity arm, we've got a foundation. Because, once you announce yourself as a geriatrician in a third world country, of course, you're going to be inundated with people saying, there's this person down the road who is ill. And it became very clear that we needed a foundation, a charitable arm that would help us to look after the underprivileged elderly. So, we have that arm. But even with that, we depend on the people who have got the funds, who can pay for their healthcare, so that we can take some of that and look after the underprivileged elderly people, which is what we do.
Absolutely.
So either which way, it's a huge burden on families.
So Dr. Ajala, of course, part of the point of this program is to facilitate the understanding of the public in particularly matters that have to do with their day-to-day lives. You've talked about your original impression before you came into Nigeria and started this work, that perhaps Alzheimer's was a disease of the West. Or dementia, I believe you said. Yes, and there's a distinction between the two. Alzheimer's may be, but quite a lot of the dementia we're talking
we can
about
talk
vascular
about that
dementia,
because
isn't
exactly.
it?
So that's what I found.
Precisely.
The majority,
that,
majority of the dementias that we have in Nigeria is vascular.
Vascular.
It's vascular. I think I have 2 patients out of over 1,000 who have got Alzheimer's that we can categorically say have got Alzheimer's dementia. We've got a couple that have got frontotemporal dementia, but the vast majority, a couple have got Lewy body dementia. Vast majority is vascular.
And where's that coming from? Where's that vascular dementia coming from? It speaks of an underlying burden of cardiovascular
disease, and that's pretty much it. So we are actually in a good position as a community, as a society, to reduce that burden of dementia by tackling vascular risk factors.
Absolutely.
So that is something that we have to actively promote. We have to. When we talk about preventing dementia, because we need to do better at our age group. Like I said, by 2025, we'll be there. I'm 55, right? So I'll be 80. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it, 80. So
55, Ajala, you don't look a day over 18.
Well, I mean, thank you. Your brownie points all the way, So, we've got to tighten up on our vascular risk factors. Hypertension, high cholesterol, diabetes, stress management. Stress management is key, that lifestyle, exercise.
Sure.
I work out every day. I work out every day, and I'm not doing it because I want to keep my weight down. I do it because of my brain. More brain than my heart or anything else. It's because of my brain, because, physical exercise, that is proven beyond all doubt to reduce your risk of developing dementia. More than 30%, 30 to 40%.
Absolutely.
If you work out 3 times a week, that reduces your risk of developing dementia. But for us, because, but even with Alzheimer's, there is a link to vascular risk factors, even with Alzheimer's dementia. That's not predominantly what we have in this country, in this society. We have vascular dementia. So when you do the scanning, when you scan the brain, when you do, detailed testing, you just see that quite a lot of people did not, over those years, manage those vascular risk factors.
The diabetes, the high cholesterol, hypertension.
Hypertension.
Yeah.
So it's very important for us as a community to tighten up, we've got to educate people. People just need to know that is one of the main things they need to do. Tighten up on, those vascular risk factors. Make sure the blood pressure is well controlled, cholesterol's down, diabetes well controlled, and stress management, So that's super important for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we've just been talking about, and we've spoken about the plethora of conditions, physical, psychological, otherwise, to which elderly people are subject. We've also discussed the importance of dementia as a part of that entire picture. But of course, there are other conditions and other things to which they are susceptible. The elderly people fall.
Yes, the elderly people
Can you
fall.
talk to me a bit about that and the prevalence of that and how big a problem that is in this society?
Right. So, one of the things as a geriatrician, people who come in and one of the things that they say is, oh, my mom or my dad was absolutely fine until they had this fall. And none of this happened until they had this fall. And, a fall for an elderly person is a life-changing, for many people, is a life-changing event.
The loss of confidence.
Loss of confidence, there's a fear of falling. People, so we have the saying in geriatric medicine, fallers fall. So we try and prevent people from falling. Sometimes it's not that easy to prevent falls. There are all sorts of things around falling. So, you try and prevent falls. So when people come into my geriatric clinic, for instance, I would say to them, I look at their footwear, like, oh, no. Falls risk here. Lots of people have over the years, they've lost muscle mass, they've had a stroke. I'm talking about strokes. That's another thing I found. One thing I found in this environment, this society, if you can prevent a stroke, you tend to, people age well or age much better if they have avoided having a stroke over that course of their lives. And, in this environment, by the time you scan many people, do MRIs at 65, you see that people have actually had silent strokes. They didn't know about it. They've got small vessel disease. So if you can prevent a stroke, you are going to prevent lots of falls. You are going to prevent lots of frailty. You're going to prevent, the sarcopenia, that muscle loss, and, you're going to prevent dementia.
Vascular
strokes,
dementia.
yes, because that's, like I said, vascular dementia is 80% or more. I'd go as far as say 90% of the dementias are vascular.
Yeah. That's diabetes, stroke,
yes.
the rest of it. Yep.
So if you can prevent a stroke, you can probably prevent most falls.
Absolutely.
You can. And you can prevent most, should I say, dementias.
Yeah.
So it all still ties back to the vascular risk factors. It would be very unusual for someone who doesn't have any damage to the brain at all. No damage, no visual impairment, no balance issue, to have a fall. I mean, to have a fall, if you've got an intact brain, you must be doing something particularly risky. Maybe, deciding to paint your roof or something like that. But most people that fall and, nobody knows how they fell, when you scan their brains, you see that they've had a degree of, vascular damage to the brain.
Yes.
A while back, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the tie-in, of course, between the cardiovascular disease, risk factors, the diabetes, the strokes, all part of that,
Yes.
and the vascular dementia. And
the falls.
And the falls, absolutely. And very important in preventing elderly people from falling. Once they fall once, they can fall recurrently.
Once they fall once, they can fall recurrently. And some people fall once, they fall, they bang their heads, they have a bleeding to the brain, and then they just keep falling.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But let's talk a bit about what follows a fall, and perhaps some of the other things that can become apparent after that. But a fall means perhaps a hip fracture, perhaps reveals some underlying osteoporosis.
It seems to open up a can of worms. So
Yes.
someone actually told me yesterday, my mom was okay until she had this fall.
Yeah.
I hear it all the time, not just here in Nigeria, in the UK
Absolutely.
as well. They'll be like, and then people are just so shocked with the decline that comes, because that person has been holding themselves together.
They've opened up a Pandora's box.
And then all of a sudden they have a fall, they're on the floor. And then God forbid everyone thought they were fine. So they don't have a caregiver. They're on the floor for hours. They don't know how to get up off that floor. They're on the floor for hours. They develop a wound or they get an infection, and presto, heart failure and all sorts of things, delirium. And then that person goes from seemingly being on this level to just being down here. And then we now have to start working to get that person back. We almost never get someone back after a fall to where they were before. There's almost always a gap. Yeah. So if they were functioning at this level, that's it. But if unfortunately they were functioning at this level and have a fall, and we might get them back, but you know.
So Dr. Ajala, we've talked about the prevalence of dementia in Nigeria, and the fact that much of this, of course, is vascular dementia, perhaps arising from the huge burden of cardiovascular risk, that iceberg of risk that exists in society. Yeah. But I want us to take a bit of time to talk about some of the other forms of dementia, Alzheimer's. Quite famous individuals like Bruce Willis, Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan. Of course, the clear distinction there is that this is a Western society, perhaps slightly more affluent socioeconomic group.
Yes.
But you did make the point earlier that we are becoming an increasingly affluent society, particularly in the middle class. So do you expect that we will see more and more of Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia in this country?
I'm afraid so. I'm afraid so. So like I said, 2018, I really wasn't expecting this burden. I didn't think we even had dementia in any form. I thought it was a rarity. But now it isn't. It isn't. It's almost, it's actually endemic. It's an endemic problem of the older age group in Nigeria, dementia. So like I said, the majority of patients with dementia or people with dementia, it's vascular. I do have some patients with Alzheimer's dementia. I have some patients with Lewy body dementia and frontotemporal dementia, which is very unfortunate because those are younger patients. They're younger patients. And, we talked about trying to prevent dementia. There are some dementias that you can prevent by tightening up on vascular risk factors. But there is still a genetic basis to some dementias, frontotemporal dementia, for instance. So if you look at Bruce Willis, so some years ago, he had this aphasia. That's what they said. I still remember reading somewhere that had some aphasia. Once you start to have all these neurological diagnoses, and all of that, in time, we tend to uncover things, either motor neuron disease or dementia. So is this frontotemporal dementia, which has a very strong genetic, there's a strong genetic bond to it. So I'm sure if you look back in his family history, there will be somebody who had frontotemporal dementia. So with that kind of dementia, it's unfortunate. You can still work on tightening up vascular, because lifestyle still helps. We know that 30%, at least 30% of dementias are preventable, with lifestyle changes, interventions. So who knows? So still go ahead and do the lifestyle interventions. And I must say one thing with what I have seen, even in this society, people who have been active, physically active all their lives, there is a lower risk of developing dementia in those people. And even if they do develop dementia, they don't deteriorate as quickly as others in terms of the memory, loss of memory, cognitive function. That I have seen. The other thing I've seen, and I make a joke of it to people, that, it's all my aunties who are the socialites, always at a party. They don't seem to develop dementia. They don't, And I ask, because, I ask questions, when I see the very elderly who are doing well, I would ask them questions, what do you like to do? Do you drink wine? Almost invariably, they drink something. It might be, I have a shot of whiskey, or I have a glass of wine or something. They're almost never teetotalers. And physical activity, they're physically active, they're socially connected, So that's really big. And like I said, if you can prevent having a stroke, if you can prevent yourself from having a stroke early on, before you're 70, even before you're 80, very likely that you're going to enjoy a good old age, healthy aging, because that seems to be the trigger for a lot of these things, the falls, the dementias, the, dependence, everything. So if you can prevent that, very important.
So vascular, perhaps some of a genetic link. We've talked about Alzheimer's as well, which has a slightly different, significantly different pathology.
Significantly different pathology.
Relatively rare in this environment, though, but still perhaps in terms of discovery on the increase, isn't it?
It is on the increase. So we've still got to, be aware of it. So anybody that presents to me with cognitive impairment, do an MRI head. Because the way we treat the dementias is different depending on the etiology. So if it's Alzheimer's, there's medication for Alzheimer's dementia, as long as it hasn't progressed to being so severe that usually there's nothing. And then apart from the medical treatments, there are other things, there are other interventions, brain boosting, brain stimulating activities. They work. It's very important. It slows down. What we want to do is try and slow down the progression of the dementia. If you can slow it down, then people can still enjoy a good quality of life.
Yes.
Up till,
of course,
a certain age.
So on to the statement you made earlier. We had Modupe Odunsi on this program earlier, and it's interesting. You both share a particular pedigree. Both your fathers, professors,
Yes, professors, emeritus professors,
emeritus
yes,
professors,
yeah.
and your
both mothers professors.
Absolutely, absolutely, and your
Yes.
illustrious father,
Yes.
Professor Oluwole Akonde,
Yes.
OON, is a distinguished emeritus professor in obstetrics and gynecology, and pioneer provost and chief medical director of the University College Hospital Ibadan. You are beaming. I know how incredibly proud you are of
I
your
have.
father.
Everyone always says that when they talk about my
Yes.
dad, because he, growing up as a child, as his daughter, actually, I did a write-up, I think for his 80th birthday, it was for his 80th birthday, and the title was, Are You Professor Akonde's Daughter? Because I remember getting to, first of all, medical school in UCH. I mean, I got away with murder because I was Professor Akonde's daughter. I mean, people would be like, you're Professor Akonde's daughter. I could get away. He had poured water forward, he'd laid the ground. He had so much goodwill. And then I got to the UK and I got the same response from people, you are Professor Akonde. No, it was, are you Professor Akonde's daughter? Because I work in my maiden name in the UK. And, so I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of him. And he's proud of me now.
Yes,
so he tells me that,
yes.
you're giving me, he tells me you're giving me relevance. That's what he said to me the other day, because people call him when they are in dire straits, we need to speak to your daughter. So he's like a gateway now. He's one that gates who gets spoken
Absolutely.
to.
Absolutely. And that is,
and then he'll call me, this person's called, they want to speak to you, that person wants to speak to you, that person wants to speak to you. And I'm quite happy, I must say, to be in this position, because at the very beginning I wasn't sure how all this was going to play out.
Sure. And that's interesting. And that is the circle of life, isn't it? He now gatekeeps for you.
Yes.
But of course, Professor Akonde has held significant international positions as well, including program director at the World Health Organization once upon a time. And as you've said, he's been a mentor and a support to so many.
Yeah,
but lest we forget, there is, of course, another Professor Akonde.
Yes, my brother.
Akonde is your brother. Is a professor of public international law at Oxford.
Yes, very proud of him.
Fellow of All Souls.
Very
College,
proud.
No less.
Yes.
Dr. Akonde was the first black professor to be honored with a portrait at St. Peter's College in Oxford. And of course, no less, the UK's nominee to the International Court of Justice, the World Court next year. So what has all this meant to you as a person, as a professional, attempting to do great things like this in this country?
Well, for starts, the fact that both of them are very proud of me. That's something, we had a party for one of our daughters graduated from university, and at the party, my brother was there, and everyone wanted to take photos with him. Yes. I think people were more or less queuing up to take photos with him.
Quite.
And I thought, gosh, are you famous then, or what's going on? Yeah. So yes, of course, it's fantastic. I don't know. I mean, I've actually got another brother who is he's our psychogeriatrician at JBS, Gerontology Center. My brother, Dr. Benga Akonde. And thank God for him. So he's based in Manchester.
He's in the UK, isn't he?
And like I said, I really did not appreciate the burden of dementia and the behavioral problems and, the impact it had on so many lives and families. Thank God for him. Him taking time out to come to Nigeria to help me at the beginning. So I'm surrounded by greatness.
Yes.
I'm surrounded by greatness. Don't know what else to say about that,
Thank you.
So,
absolutely. Dr. Toyin Ajala, thank you very much for joining us on One2One.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.